Okay, my name is Jeff Tedlow, and I want to welcome you all to my second video lesson, which is a demo lesson talking about how I can improve my first lesson based on the comments from my PLC team, from the teachers on my PLC team. And my lesson is, first of all, I am a 10th grade English literature teacher at Bangkok Christian College, and I recently taught a lesson on the short story, The Seventh Man, to my 10th grade literature students. And we focused on a certain part of the story, the part of the story where the seventh man sees his best friend, Kay, well, actually, let me first tell you quickly about the story. The Seventh Man is a story about a man who lives with guilt and shame and fear for the majority of his adult life because he was in a hurricane and then a tsunami where his best friend as a child, a boy named Kay, died. And he always felt that he should have been able to save Kay from the tsunami. They were both on the beach when the tsunami happened, but he was unable to save him, and he lives with the guilt of not being able to save Kay for many, many years until he's finally able to move beyond that, to reconcile his feelings of guilt and shame, to face them after running from them for so many years. He finally faces them and is able to move on with his life. But we are focusing in this lesson on just one section of the story, which is when the seventh man sees a vision of his best friend Kay in the wave right after Kay was killed by the tsunami. So that's what this lesson is focusing on. So I did my first lesson in front of students, and that's the lesson that was critiqued by Teacher Stephen and Teacher Amit. Teacher Amit is a fellow member of our Module 3 team, and Teacher Stephen is a co-worker of mine who has 20 years teaching experience. And so both of those teachers viewed my first lesson in front of students, and they offered their critiques. And this lesson is about me showing you how I would teach the lesson, again, incorporating the feedback that I received. So first we'll start with the highlights from the PLC report from lesson 1. So I didn't put the positive highlights on the presentation here, but I will just start to say that the positives, the main positives from the lesson were that I did a good job explaining the passage that we read of the seventh man to the students, and I did a very good job at asking critical thinking type, higher order thinking questions. So that's what I did well, and I did a really good job engaging the students. But here's where I could have improved the lesson based on the feedback from Teacher Stephen and Teacher Amit on my PLC form. So the highlights were more technology needs to be integrated into the lesson. I could have related the story more to the real world to make it more relatable for students. I also could have used more interactive strategies, and I could have given students more autonomy in how they demonstrated understanding of the lesson content. So the issues that needed to be addressed from the PLC report, again from the feedback I got from Teacher Stephen and Teacher Amit, were to focus on traditional teaching. Well, in other words, the issues that I need to address were the fact that I focus on traditional teaching methods instead of active learning methods. There were time constraints in the lesson which led me to streamline activities because I didn't have enough time for more student-led activities. And my reliance on a limited number of technology tools such as Microsoft Teams and OneNote resulted in me using a more conventional approach in conducting the lesson. And there was also not enough scaffolding provided I didn't provide enough scaffolding to allow students more autonomy in demonstrating their understanding of the story. So actions that I would implement if I were to teach this lesson again in front of students. And I forgot to mention before, the reason I've decided to do this second lesson, well, I had no choice in doing this second lesson as a demo lesson, because summer school is finished and students will not be back until the middle of May. But also, I wanted to give myself the experience of doing a demo lesson to show fellow professional educators, how I would teach this lesson in a different way based on constructive feedback. Because I've never given this type of demo lesson before. So I think this is a really good experience for me to help improve my teaching by giving a demo lesson to analyze, what did I do wrong in this lesson, or how could I have improved it, and what I will do to improve it based on that feedback. So besides the practical considerations that I don't have students until the middle of May and summer school is finished, I think the experience of doing a demo lesson will be very valuable to me, since I've never done one before, and really help me as a teacher. Okay, so actions to implement for lesson 2. I will use digital tools such as Booklet or Kahoot in order to increase student engagement. I'll use multimedia clips such as short documentaries or animation to support student comprehension and deepen students' emotional connection to events and themes of my stories, or the stories that I teach my students. And I'll incorporate additional activities such as emotion mapping, soundscapes, and role play to better bring stories to life for my students. So lesson objectives are, number 1, and these are for the observers, everyone observing this demonstration lesson. The objectives are to observe my implementation of higher order questioning in the lesson, to observe how trauma and guilt can be explored through literature, to observe how student-centered and multi-sensory instructional strategies are modeled, and to observe how technology and creative assessment tools are integrated into the lesson. All right, so the first thing I would do in my revised lesson would be, I would show a tsunami devastation video. And after showing the video, I would ask the class, how do our traumatic experiences shape us? So this is a video of a tsunami hitting a coastal area. I would explain to the class how the seventh man's experience, the seventh man is the main character in the story. He is not named in the story. He is just called the seventh man. So I would explain to the class how the seventh man's experience, excuse me, of witnessing his best friend's death in the tsunami will stay with him for many years to come due to the traumatic nature of the experience, as well as the guilt and shame he feels as he blames himself for his best friend's death. Now, keep in mind, this all happened when the seventh man was only 10 years old. So after I show the tsunami destruction video, well, it's actually important to talk about here how emotional hooks can activate student engagement in literature studies. So emotions create relevance. So when a learner feels something such as empathy, fear, or joy when studying a character, they relate these emotions to their own past experiences, which helps them relate more to that character. So teachers can help students experience emotions by highlighting a character's internal struggle, asking students questions that tap into universal feelings. For example, have you ever felt alone in a crowd? Or asking students if they've ever experienced anything similar to that character in their own lives. And during reading, teachers can pause and ask students to reflect how they are feeling and if the character's situation or struggle is triggering any of their own memories of similar past experiences that they might have. So the first thing I would do in my revised lesson is I would do a Kahoot vocabulary review for certain vocabulary words that are in the, or challenging vocabulary words that are in the lesson that I taught, in the excerpt that I read with the students. So the words that I would spotlight are hallucination, guilt, trauma, transparent, and grin. And here you see an example of a question I created in Kahoot. When the seventh man saw a vision of K in the wave, we could say the wave was, and the choices are transparent, guilty, hallucination, and grinning. Obviously the answer is transparent. Transparent meaning you can see right through the wave, and therefore the seventh man could see K's vision in the wave. So, technology's role in increasing engagement and recall is very important here. So, interactive tools such as Kahoot, also Nearpod and Booklet, can turn quizzes, what normally would be quizzes, into games. And this increases student engagement by encouraging active participation. Also, real-time feedback, which is what technology offers, keeps students involved and engaged, because when the students do that Kahoot that I just showed you, they'll know straight away what the answer to the question is. They'll know straight away whether they got it wrong. Whereas on a test, it may take 1 or 2 weeks until I have the chance to mark it. Technology can make learning feel like play, right? When the students are doing that Kahoot for those vocabulary words, they're in friendly competition with one another. So it feels like a game, it feels like play. Videos, animations, virtual tours make lessons more dynamic, and students can relate to them better. And then technology platforms such as YouTube, which I would use to show that tsunami video, can bring abstract concepts to life. So students actually see the video of the tsunami destruction on the screen. So they don't have to just imagine it, especially, you know, if they are unclear as to what a tsunami is, or if they've you know, never seen one on TV or seen a movie that depicts it. So YouTube and other technology platforms can turn these abstract concepts into concrete concepts. It brings it to life for them. And gamification, like what Kahoot and Booklet and other technology platforms can offer, can tap into students' natural competitiveness, as I said before, and that makes learning more exciting. So here's the annotated excerpt where the seventh man sees K in the wave. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read it, and I'm going to explain to you how I would teach this to the students based on the feedback that I received. Well, actually, to be clear, this was the part of the lesson that went well, according to Teacher Stephen and Teacher Amit. I read this excerpt to the students, or we read it together in video 1, and I stopped and, you know, for each section, relevant section, and I explained it well and asked them, you know, explain to the students what was going on, tried to elicit understanding as to what was going on, explained any concepts that were confusing to the students, and I did a really good job at, you know, checking for understanding and asking good questions. Anyway, so let's see here. Some of you may find it possible, like a brick wall slowly crumbling. It was so huge that it no longer looked like a real wave. This is the second tsunami wave after the seventh man's best friend is killed in the wave. He sees a second tsunami wave hits, and he sees a vision of his best friend Kay, who has just been killed in the wave. It was so huge it no longer looked like a real wave. It was like something from another far-off world that just happened to assume the shape of the wave. I readied myself for the moment the darkness would take me. I didn't even close my eyes. I remember hearing my heart pound with incredible clarity. The moment the wave came before me, however, it stopped. All at once it seemed to run out of energy, to lose its forward motion and simply hover there in space, crumbling in stillness. And in its crest, inside its cool, transparent tongue, what I saw was K. So the seventh man is behind the breakwater at the beach after his best friend K is just killed by the first wave, and now he sees the second wave coming. He experiences the second wave, and he sees a vision of K in the wave. Now, the seventh man is telling this story 40 some odd years later to a group of people that are in a house in Japan where the story takes place during a typhoon. So that's the basic context here. He's telling the story of this tsunami that happened to him when he was 10 years old, when his best friend Kay was killed by that tsunami. Some of you may find this possible to believe, and if so, I don't blame you. I myself have trouble accepting it even now. I can't explain what I saw any better than you can, but I know it was no illusion, no hallucination. I am telling you as honestly as I can what happened at that moment, what really happened. In the tip of the wave, as if enclosed in some kind of transparent capsule, floated Kay's body reclining on its side. But that is not all. Kay was looking straight at me, smiling. There, right in front of me, so close that I could have reached out and touched him, was my friend Kay, who only moments before had been swallowed by the wave. And he was smiling at me, not with an ordinary smile. It was a big, wide-open grin that literally stretched from ear to ear. His cold, frozen eyes were locked on mine. He was no longer the Kay I knew, and his right arm was stretched out in my direction, as if he were trying to grab my hand and pull me into that other world where he was now. So what I would ask the students, first I would define hallucination, okay, or I did define hallucination in the lesson, and then I asked them to tell me what the vision of Kay looked like. So I'm trying to elicit that Kay was grinning, not smiling. So I explain the difference in connotation between grin and smile, whereas, you know, a smile is a pure smile of happiness, a pure facial expression of happiness, whereas a grin is a sort of a, you know, an evil smile or an angry smile. So I would ask the students, you know, why is the author, or I did ask the students, why is the author using the term grin instead of smile? And I would elicit that Kay is, according to this vision, Kay is angry at the seventh man for not saving him, or the seventh man is perceiving this. So then we would talk about a hallucination. What is a hallucination? A hallucination is when you see or hear something that is not there. So then I said to the students, do you think this was a hallucination, or did Kay really see, or did the seventh man really see Kay in the wave? And why would, and then the other big question I would ask is why, or I did ask, I keep saying would, I've actually taught this lesson already, why did the seventh man have this vision of Kay in the wave? If it is a hallucination, and I said to the students, let's assume that it's a hallucination. Why would the seventh man have this vision of Kay in the wave? And what I would try to elicit was, from the students, is that he is so traumatized by moments earlier seeing Kay in the wave, and he's so traumatized by Kay being killed by the first wave moments earlier, and he feels not only shock, but he feels tremendous sadness and tremendous guilt for not saving him, that this could be why he's having this vision. He's imagining that Kay is angry at him for not saving him. So now Kay turns into this monster who has his hand stretched out he's as if he were trying to grab my hand and pull me into that other world where he was now. So I would elicit that the seventh man is having this vision because he is feeling a profound sense of trauma, guilt, and fear over not saving his friend, and just the trauma of watching his friend die at 10 years old nonetheless. So what I would then do is I would ask, and this is something that I got from the feedback from my PLC team. I would use something like an emotion map to get the students to visualize how the seventh man's emotions changed from before, during, and after the traumatic wave event. So here's an example of an emotion map I might use. So before the wave, the seventh man is calm because they went down to the beach in the middle of a typhoon to check out the damage, as kids would do. They want to check out, how the beach has changed in the middle of a typhoon. And so he was calm, and then during the wave up here, this represents during the wave the peak of the seventh man's emotional journey, if you will. He's now feeling great fear as the wave is striking, and this is where K is being killed in the middle of this graph here during the wave. I should say during. Anyway, and so the fear will now turn to guilt and sadness. This is after the wave strikes. So this is what I would want the students to come up with, that he felt calm before the wave, that he felt fear during the wave, and then guilt and sadness after the wave. So this is student guidelines for the emotion map to be filled out after we read the excerpt that I just went over, where the seventh man sees K in the wave. So here's an instruction document that I might give and go over to the students, or that I would give. Using the story, plot the emotional journey of the seventh man before, during, and after the wave. Consider feelings such as fear, confusion, guilt, sadness, and recovery. And I would make sure the students understand the definition of all of these words, especially recovery. They might not quite understand that word. And you may draw your graph or use keywords at each point of emotional change. So they could either draw a graph, or they could just sort of fill it out like this. Although I think I would probably require that they draw a graph. So before wave, during wave, after wave, and then the overall reflection. Okay, so the overall reflection might be something like, before the wave, the seventh man was very calm and very curious about what they would find at the beach, and he was very curious at everything that he did find at the beach, and was looking at it and examining it and seeing what kind of evidence it was, or what it was evidence of, or what type of item it was before it got destroyed. For example, I don't know, the window of a car or a couch from someone's home, that kind of thing. And then during the wave, he was terrified and he was extremely traumatized as he saw Kay being killed. And after the wave, he felt a profound sense of guilt and sadness. Not sadness for losing his best friend, and guilt because he was unable to save him. He chose to run the opposite direction, away from the beach, instead of running toward Kay to save him. I forgot to mention that little detail. So this speaks to the emotion map. It's worth to talk about the benefits of emotional engagement. So what's the purpose of using the emotion map, and how does it help the students? So when students feel emotionally connected to what they're learning, it becomes personally meaningful to them. So that increases student interest. If students can experience what a character is feeling by visually mapping out his or her emotions, they are more likely to care about the content and therefore stay focused in learning. Also, emotional engagement encourages students to reflect, analyze, and make connections, which helps them think critically. And emotional engagement builds empathy. Students can more easily connect to real human experiences by relating to a character's situation and the emotions he or she is feeling. So, well, here's the completed emotion map. The teacher will then, I would then display a completed emotion map from a student, and I would lead a class discussion analyzing the student's work. So here's an example of a completed emotion map that a student might have submitted. So before wave, calm, curious; during wave, anxious, terrified; after wave, sad, guilty. And then overall reflection: the seventh man was calm and curious before the wave, as he was wondering what the beach would look like during the eye of the typhoon. He then became very anxious and fearful as the wave struck and killed Kay. He then, after the wave, felt an extreme sense of sadness and guilt at the loss of his best friend, as well as his inability to save him. So I would then, and this is something I didn't do in my video lesson number 1, but upon reflection from the PLC report, I think I would ask this question to the students: was the seventh man a coward or a victim? Was he, regarding his inability to save Kay from the wave, was he a coward or a victim? I would instruct the students to state their opinion and provide text evidence to back their opinion up. So I would give them an example. I would give them an example such as: I believe the seventh man was a victim because he was only 10 years old at the time of this incident, and therefore could not have been expected to be able to make an instant life or death decision. Also, his vision of seeing Kay in the wave is evidence of the extreme trauma he felt as he watched Kay die, and therefore was not in any emotional state to make this kind of decision. So, just a note here, this question does focus on the previous section read in class in the previous lesson. But I think it's relevant to this lesson because the seventh man's vision of Kay in the wave is evidence of his emotional state after not being able to save Kay. So I would then show students language for agreeing and disagreeing, because as I elicit students' opinions, I would want them to comment on each other's opinions by expressing agreement or expressing disagreement. So I'll then go over proper language for agreeing and disagreeing, so the students can have a proper discussion in which they agree or disagree with another. So expressing agreement, I would model these or go over these statements. I agree with you. Yes, that's true. Good point. I think the same. That's a good idea. I feel the same way. And then if they're expressing disagreement: I don't think so. I'm afraid I disagree. I totally disagree. I'm not sure about that. So this now leads us to analyze how structured discussion fosters autonomy and critical thinking. So structured discussions, such as debates, shifts the focus in class from the teacher to the students. Students learn to express their ideas clearly and participate without relying on prompts from the teacher. And then to debate properly, students need to decide their stance on the issue, as well as prepare evidence in advance to support their viewpoints. And this advanced preparation involves active reading, reflection, and research. And all of this is essential to developing students' critical thinking. Students learn to build and critique arguments rather than simply stating their opinion, which most likely will be based on emotion or would be surface level. So now we have the student creative assessment options. And this was also part of my PLC report that both Teacher Amit and Teacher Stevens suggested that I employ more creative assessment teaching or creative assessment methods. So I would give students 3 options to demonstrate their understanding of this excerpt of the seventh man, which we focused on in this lesson. So there's three things they could do. They could either write a letter to Kay, create a trauma awareness poster, or record a podcast reflection. These are three things I did not do in my original lesson in video 1 in front of the students. So, explaining these in a bit more detail. So option 1, write a letter from the seventh man to Kay. Excuse me. The students can choose to write a letter from the seventh man to Kay in which they explain to Kay how Kay's death affected him. They will be instructed to go into some detail about the guilt and terror that the seventh man lived with and explain how he feels different at the end of the story. And the second option, students can create a trauma awareness poster like this one right here. So what is trauma, a definition of trauma, examples of trauma, and what we can do as a community to help people who are experiencing trauma. For example, speak kindly, listen without judgment, and also offer choices when possible, respect someone's personal space, and also to emphasize that in this classroom, mistakes are okay and feelings are valid. So I would show this example and go over this in a little bit more detail so the students understood, what a trauma poster is and how they could create one. The other creative assessment option, the third option, is students can record a podcast reflection in the following formats. So I would give them three options. So they could speak as themselves, analyzing the seventh man's emotions as he is watching, as he has this vision of Kay in the wave. Students could perform as the seventh man, sharing his thoughts years later. So they could just pretend to be the seventh man as an adult. By the way, he's in his mid-50s when he tells this story to everyone in this home. And then the third option would be an interview style. One student would play the seventh man, the other plays a host or a therapist asking questions about how the seventh man dealt with this event, this traumatic event of losing his best friend in a tsunami when he was 10 years old. So this brings us to a discussion of how student choice in learning promotes deeper understanding. So so why would I use choice? In other words, why would I use this? Why would I give students the choice in learning next time I teach this? Choice encourages students' self-expression. When students choose topics, formats, or methods, they're able to explore their own interests, opinions, and perspectives. Choice builds student confidence because they will believe that their ideas matter as they become active participants in their own learning rather than passive receivers of information. Also, students will believe that they have a voice in my classroom, that their opinions, interests, and perspectives matter. When students choose their own learning methods, they take ownership of their work and therefore are motivated to create quality work as well as persist and try harder when their work gets challenging instead of them simply giving up. So then at the end of the lesson, I would do two things. First, I would use a Google form class poll to have students reflect on the lesson. So this would be called the seventh man, the wave scene student reflection. In this short reflection, you'll respond to questions about the scene in the seventh man when the narrator sees his friend Kay in the wave. Think about how this moment reveals his emotions and how it connects to themes like trauma, guilt, and fear. So the first question, some of the questions would be short answer or paragraphs. Others would be multiple choice. What was your reaction to the moment when the seventh man saw Kay in the wave? How did it make you feel as a reader? Next question, what emotion do you think the seventh man felt most at that moment? And I would give them these choices: fear, shock, guilt, sadness, helplessness, or other. They could choose their own. And in this case, they could, of course, choose more than one. And then why do you think the image of K stayed with the seventh man for so many years? And then that would be a long answer text, a long answer. And what does this moment teach us about how people respond to trauma or fear? That's a short answer text. And if you could speak to the seventh man at that moment, what would you say to him? All right. What helped you understand this part of the story better? Was it the class discussion? Was it the read aloud? Was it the visual aids or images? Or was it my explanations? Or was it the class debate? And then the end of lesson final question would be, what does the seventh man seem? So this is after I review some of the answers, the anonymous answers to the Google Forms poll. And then, so my final question to the students would be, what does the seventh man seeing K in the wave scene, what does the seventh man seeing K in the wave scene in the story teach us about confronting the past? What does the seventh man seeing K in the wave scene teach us about confronting the past? So I would want to elicit something like one of these two responses. Trying to run away from trauma doesn't make it go away. Instead, it lingers in our minds until we face it. And memory can be distorted by guilt. So actually, I would be wanting to elicit both of these responses. And then, so that's the lesson. So I want to now conclude with some important takeaways from this lesson you know, and my PLC report helped me come to these conclusions as I reformatted this lesson to be taught in the future in front of students. So using technology and open-ended questions will help me improve this lesson in the following ways. So using open-ended questions will allow students to express ideas in their own words, which gives teachers insight into how well students really understand the concept, not just whether they answered a multiple choice question correctly. For example, if I ask the question, why do you think the seventh man couldn't forgive himself? That gives much more insight into student understanding than if I simply asked, did the seventh man forgive himself? Because that would just be a one-word answer, right? Which would be no, at least for 40 years. And some other important takeaways. Technology makes student reflection immediate and inclusive because tools such as Google Forms or Padlet allow students to share their opinions and insights anonymously. So this is really important for students who feel that they're too shy to participate verbally in class. They can be anonymous in sharing their insights and not worry about, you know, being put on the spot by the teacher or by other students because they're feeling shy. Teachers can then review student responses to clarify any confusion or make adjustments to the lesson in the future. Open-ended questions encourage students to analyze, synthesize, and reflect, which builds higher order thinking skills. And technology allows students to do this in creative formats, and this, of course, improves student engagement. And finally, when teachers see where students are struggling or what kind of learning methods or ideas excite them, they can design future lessons that either reinforce key themes, if the students are struggling, or introduce more advanced concepts and challenges if they feel the students want more of a challenge or could benefit from more of a challenge, or their level is such that they could benefit from more of a challenge. These future lessons could connect to students' interests based on how the teacher saw the lesson as far as how it went. And that is it. So I want to thank you all for watching my demonstration lesson, and I want to thank Teacher Stephen and Teacher Amit for taking the time to view my original lesson plan and video, and to give me some valuable feedback. This was, as I said in the beginning, this has been a really good experience doing a demonstration lesson, because it really helped me, along with analyzing the information in the PLC report. Really helped me hone in on some of the what was good about my lesson, and how I could improve it in the future. And I will certainly take these suggestions from Teacher Stephen and Teacher Amit into consideration when I teach this lesson again to my students. So thank you all very much.